Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Financial Advisors Want to Know podcast. I'm Catherine Tindall, a CPA with Dominion. We're a specialty tax and accounting firm for the wealth management industry. And on today's episode, I'm very excited to have with me Kristin Andree. She's a high-performance coach, author, speaker, podcaster, and tell it like it is business strategist. She is obsessed with helping advisors grow personally, professionally, and financially. And just as a fair warning, she calls it like she sees it and will challenge you to level up and promise quite enthusiastically to become your biggest cheerleader. So thanks for coming on the show today, Kristin.
Thanks for having me, Catherine. I'm excited to be here.
I always love these conversations because I feel like our worlds collide very often with the situations that we see for advisors and just, how to help them level up. Because I think kind of where a lot of my work ends and a lot of your work begins, there's a good amount of overlap in seeing strategically what's going on in some of these firms and seeing how they're doing things with each other, and seeing kind of what the best in class are doing these days. So thanks for coming on.
I'm glad to have it. It's true. We get that peek under the hood and different arenas. Like you and I have the same type of people we work with, but we get to peek at different things. So we definitely get to see what's going on underneath the surface, which is fun.
Yeah. And I think, for today's conversation, we were talking a little bit about how I think for both of us, we're seeing that a lot of the more traditional models of way firms have been set up or solo, practitioner, hang your shingle are set up. It's not, there's new ways to do things. There's new ways to grow. So I think starting the conversation there with some of your work with advisors, how has this been reflecting in some of the things you've been seeing in practices these days with, we're in 2025. This isn't, the 80s or the 90s or even the early, 2000s. How have you seen that kind of change?
I'm seeing it a lot, but it seems like it's getting more complex. And I've been in the industry 25 years. So I came in and into 2000 and it has changed and evolved so much. And it seems like it was, I don't want to say simple when I came in, but a heck of a lot easier. And now all these moving parts that we didn't have 20 years ago, the guys and girls that have been in the industry that long are kind of finding themselves like, I'm still trying to do it the old way. And they're not really making the changes they need to stay up with the times. And it's kind of like our kids tease us, like, you're stuck in the old days. And that happens a lot in advisory practices. So I think it's an opportunity, though, especially for the ones. And even if you've been in 5 or 10 years, it's changed a lot in the last 5 years. So everybody needs to stay up on what's new so they can keep scaling and growing.
And I think when you're looking at these practices, what are kind of the biggest leverage points of change that you've been seeing in some of these behaviors or just the way that the practices are being run?
I'd say the biggest changes I'm seeing have to do with technology and marketing. Those are probably the two biggest that are exciting and create a ton of opportunities. But for a lot of advisors, they're scared to embrace it. When most of us, when we came in the industry, we started just either cold calling or calling on family and friends. And that's the only way we grew our practice. It was kind of word of mouth, the advisor next door type of thing. And that's just not how it works anymore. Certainly a component of it. But if that's the only thing an advisor is doing to grow or scale, they're stuck. So it brings in the marketing component as well. And then as planning has gotten more complex, family situations have gotten more complex. The intricacies of planning have also gotten more complex and involved. And that's where the tech stack and different ancillary partners come in to really help them bring more to their clients. And a lot of advisors are embracing it well, but some of them, I'm sure you would agree, they're not quite there yet. We're having to kind of push them along a little bit more.
Yeah. And I think with maybe to start with talking on the marketing side, because this is something where it's a conversation that I have when people are interested in working with, we go through a whole process of talking a lot more about what's going on in the practice besides just, hey, this was your taxable income. So something that I've been seeing as a trend is, you've got these practices that are, traditionally much more like regionally focused, where it's just, oh, I'm in this town, we work for people in this town, it's all just word of mouth referrals. And then I'm starting to see more and more people go on the side of, no, I serve a particular client niche and I'm not restricted to geography. I'm more looking for, I work with, doctors, I work with police officers, I work with like divorcees, like I work with a very specific niche that has specific needs and that I have a specific affinity with. non-geographically limited. Is that sort of what you've been seeing in changes? Or I guess when you think about some of these marketing components that are more at the, not at so much the tactical level, but even at the higher strategic level, are you starting to see more firms shift in that direction, or other shifts that you've been seeing there?
I'm seeing both. And even geographically, that's a market too. But what I typically tell advisors is when I start working with and coaching an advisor, I'm a strategy girl at the end of the day. So I'm like, I need to know what you're trying to build, and I will help you put in the strategies to get there. So the first question is always, what do you want your practice to look like? Who do you want to serve? Who do you enjoy working with? And that's usually the market. Sometimes it's hometown, but sometimes it is the divorcees or business owners that have closely held family businesses, or dentists or doctors, whatever it is. If we can hone in on that, then the marketing becomes easier and the planning becomes easier, because we start to really get to know and understand our target market. I think the ones that are struggling the most are the advisors that are trying to be all things to all people. From a marketing standpoint, that's tough, because then you're speaking to everyone and it just becomes white noise. So we can really get them honed in on their ideal client, their ideal target market, who they have some fun working with, which is really what it boils down to. And if we can get them doing that, it becomes a lot easier to put in some strategies that match them as the advisor and the market.
And I think the other component, and this is something that I always ask them about too, because a lot of how I think about firm setups, there's kind of two main buckets that I usually see people fall in. One is the kind of lifestyle firm where they're going to have organic growth year over year. They're not looking to get huge. They're not, they don't want to have a huge team under them. They just want to be able to have a good exit, that they've built a good business asset, and then have a good quality of life with being able to, do the work that they enjoy doing. And then I see other people that are in the bucket of, they want to grow aggressively. They want to build a platform. They want to have a lot of junior advisors. They want to build kind of an empire. And I see like kind of those two groups in my side of things. Like those tend to be the two components. And one of the questions that I tend to ask people a lot, because it has to do with the way that we do our planning, and then also the way that just giving advice of, well, what do you actually enjoy doing? Like, do you want to be a CEO? Like, do you want to be in the client relationships the whole time? Or, do you want to be training people and have staff under you and learn how to do that? Or, kind of what's going to be best for you and what you're building for yourself? Thinking through some of those questions, do you have advice for advisors just based on like how they should be reflecting on their own role within what they're doing from perspective of, well, what do you want to build, but also what's your seat on the bus in that process? Because I think for a lot of them it's a question that I usually get. It's challenging for a lot of them to answer that.
It is challenging, and it's usually because they're not asking themselves the right question, and or they grew too fast. So I met with an advisor last week that has built a very large team. They've got about 15 on their team. He's definitely morphed into the CEO role. He doesn't want to be in the CEO role. So that was the discussion we were having, is he's fantastic with clients. He's fantastic at attracting clients. He's great at the planning he does. He didn't want to be the CEO. So that was the discussion we had, is, all right, it's time to move seats, but we've got to fill that role, because the firm has grown so large that they do need a CEO, COO type of person on board. So that's what we have to look at, is like, what do you really want to do? What are your skill set fit? What do you enjoy? What are your strengths? I'm a huge proponent of the Gallup Strengths Finder. And I use that with all of my coaching clients. And I'm really trying to figure out, what are you naturally good at? What do you get excited and energized by? And once we look at that, then we kind of know what we need to hire and bring on. But, for the firms looking to scale, that's the biggest thing, is you've got to ask good questions and say, what does this look like? What's it going to look like in the future? And truthfully do some capacity planning around what's it going to take. The solo advisors, the same thing. They've got to decide, if, do I want this lifestyle practice? A lot of people do. And both of them work. It's just really getting clear on what questions are you asking, or, somebody like you or I coming in and saying, all right, let me poke at this a little bit and see where we really need to go.
Yeah. And I think for a lot of them too, having somebody to play devil's advocate too, of knowing what you're sacrificing going in one direction or another. Because I think even for a lot of the people that are on the lifestyle practice side, a common pushback that I'll have with them is, okay, you do have to realize that this asset of this business, if you've got this much key man risk with it and it's all just you, what happens when your spouse gets a cancer diagnosis and you need to be gone for 6 months? Like what happens when you want to try to exit out of this and you're going to get a much smaller multiple just because your hand is in every single pie? Like, is that what you want for an exit outcome? And, is what's holding you back from doing things a little differently just getting good coaching, getting good training, getting good outside people to help collaborate so that you can build this more robustly? Like what's the actual bottleneck? Is it a mindset thing? Is it a skills thing? What is it? And knowing kind of what the opportunity cost is of the different paths that you can take with the way that you're running your practice.
Yeah.
Just a slight interruption in this conversation. I wanted to bring to your attention two things that are important for you to know. So we're always at the mercy of social media algorithms. So if you can subscribe to the show, that would mean a lot to me. Even more to me if you can leave a rating and let me know what you think about it. But we have a new newsletter that's coming out. It's going to be very active in 2025. That is specifically around tax issues that I'm seeing advisors face in their own practices, changes in legislations, and the pieces that I think are critically important for you to stay ahead of as an advisor with the new administration. So nearby, wherever you're interacting with this, will be the link of how to sign up for our newsletter. Also nearby will be the link to my LinkedIn, which is the best way to get in touch with me, learn more about what we're doing for advisors in the tax strategy and compliance work that we do, and also to get access to the various tools and interviews and things that I do, specifically designed to help you improve your practice, improve your own tax situation, etc. So let's get back to the episode, and thanks for tuning in.
It's so huge. And I think that's fun about what we do. Like I kind of joke sometimes, I'm like, I feel like I'm the whole poker, right? Because I mean, I was an advisor, I've run a firm before, so I get that side of it. But now I get to look at it from a different perspective and go in and go, okay, what about this? What about this? Like you said, what is the key man risk if it's just you? But a lot of times, like as advisors, we think about that with our clients. But when we're in the advisor seat, we don't always think about it with ourselves in our practice. So it's been kind of fun to merge those two together and then pull in the resources that they need. Because I mean, there's from the financials and accounting, I mean, you're out there, there's tons of marketing companies, the resources are there. We just have, help the advisors ask the right questions so we know who to pull in.
Yeah. And a lot of times, it's funny. One of my bigger conversations with a lot of advisors around tax strategy is just the way that you play the tax game when you're a professional services company is strategically making investments back into the practice. Like that's just the way that you have to do it. And so being able to figure out what the bottlenecks are and then just strategically, okay, so the next issue is we need to hire for this role, or we need to get consulting on this particular area within the practice we're not strong on. Marketing, it could be something in the tech stack. It could be your CRM needs to be cleaned out, because whatever it is, right? Like identifying those bottlenecks and then strategically doing reinvestments. Because if you've got a ton of discretionary profit, but you're not where you want to be, well, that profit really just should have been invested back into the practice to get you.
This is why I love people like you, because I can make these strategies and you can tell them how it's good for them from a tax and financial standpoint, which is good.
Yeah, because otherwise you're just paying a lot of taxes on money that it's like, what it's getting you, a market return. Like what could it have gotten you invested back in the practice, strategically done.
Sometimes with advisors, I feel like that's an easy conversation and they get it because they are that growth mindset. But that's where I was in at the start. We talked about the old rules and things we have to get rid of. So many of us came in and we're thinking, it's just me and I'm under my shingle, and you're in their little bubble, and we got to get them out of that. Okay, if you want to go here, this is what it's going to take to get there. Because a lot of times they weren't used to investing larger sums back in the business. And so especially for those that just want to be the solo, the entity advisor, the solo or small entity advisor, it's hard. It's hard to get them to say, okay, here's how we connect where you are now to where you're going.
Yeah. And I think for a lot of them that switch up to of this business is an asset. Like this, it's like, this is an orchard that you're planting, and you are going to be limited by your own efforts unless you can figure out how to get the equipment that you need to get those higher leverage outputs from it. And
exactly.
I think for a lot of them, they just see themselves as the business so much. And then it's kind of like the technician's fallacy. Like you get thinking that it's, this is the limit of what it could be. And in reality, if you can get it to be a bigger organism, you're going to have a much higher leverage output too. So it's not just a matter of like, oh, well, what are you getting for a multiple when you exit, but just if you can figure out how to do this more efficiently, how to train some internal staff, how to get things done correctly, now you're helping, 200 households instead of 100 households.
Right.
Now you're helping 500 households. It's just leveraging your ability to serve people better too. So it's not fully, selfish, but it's, the more that you can make it efficient, it's the more you can, really increase the impact that you're having.
Yeah, the impact, the revenue, the multiples if you're trying to sell or retire or get acquired, because they're looking for, when we look on the M&A side or even selling your practice to a successor, they're looking at something that's repeatable, sustainable, that the retention's already there, that's on a growth trajectory. Without those things, you're just kind of hurting your own final exit, sale, retirement, whatever you want to do. And I do believe advisors are starting to look at this more than they did in years past. 10 years ago, looking at exit planning for advisors or selling their practice or M&A, it was not as much of a discussion as I'm hearing from advisors now. So we're having to incorporate that a lot in the strategy work and the coaching work. And I know, in the financial and accounting work you guys are doing, people weren't thinking about this, not as much. So now we've got to make this a whole part of what we're doing to help them scale, because there's a big reason for it.
Yeah. And I think for them too, a lot of the argument I make when I have this conversation of, have you done any exit planning? Are you thinking about it? It's when you get into that frame of mind, businesses that are good to sell are businesses that are good to run. So because you've made this more valuable for an outside person,
Yep.
You're the one that's harvesting that value now, right? The fact that it can be repeatable, the fact that you're not the spoke in the middle of the wheel and, you're the bottleneck of everything, going through the process of that and getting things ready, it's just going to make your life better, right? Like when the financials are clean, you've got a strong team, you've got good retention, that's you, you're getting the benefit of that. So I think for a lot of advisors are like, oh, well, I'm not going to sell for 30 years. We'll figure this out later. And it's like, no, it would help you to think about it now.
Right.
Instead of, even if you have no plans to sell, it's something.
Even if it's 30 years down the road, you still want things running efficiently and not beating your head against the wall and all that in the interim. Let's take 30 years of growth where you're having fun and it's running efficiently and smoothly and you like the team and the people you're with. That makes those 30 years way more enjoyable than just waiting to fix it down the road.
So when you're working with practices and kind of trying to help them break out of this more traditional mindset, besides the marketing component, are there other strategic areas that you think that you observed that firms just aren't thinking about, that are, quick, high leverage plays, or just observations that you've had from going through this experience with people?
Well, we talked about marketing. I think people, and honestly, technology. And when I say technology, not just their wealth stack and their tech stack and their CRM and everything they have, but what are they doing to embrace the future? AI is huge right now. And, I taught a class yesterday on how to leverage AI in your advisory practice. And this isn't the managing portfolio piece. This is more the true practice management, understanding your market, figuring out, your services. What are you doing to deeply understand your clients and prep for those meetings? And how are you expanding? So there's a lot of things AI can do to help us understand our clientele better and help us save time. So I think that's an area that I'm seeing us progressively move towards. There's been a lot of research and tons of people talk about it on LinkedIn about what AI is going to do to this industry in terms of the AI side. And I think that's still to be determined. I do think people go to AI first to ask things, but they need advisors. They need the people component. So I'd say technology, embracing AI, and learning to leverage the people component that you already have, the people you have on your team, your junior advisors, your admin, your client associates, everybody, leveraging them to bring the human component as all these technological advances keep coming. So I think that's what we're getting a lot of questions and doing a lot of coaching and strategy work around. And it's truthfully, a lot of people are scared by it. I think it's exciting. I think if you're on the forefront of this, you can say, okay, what can we do to insulate our advisory firm from all of these changes that we know are coming? It's kind of like when the internet came out, we're all like, oh my God, this is never going to catch on. But could you imagine life without it now? And I think get on top of this first and say, all right, let's look at it. What can we do? And keep evolving.
Absolutely. And I think, one of the things I've at least experienced with a lot of advisors is depending on how they're set up. So if they're like an RIA or if they're broker dealer side, there's a lot of frustration around the technology piece
Yeah.
of just, we can't do
Across
this
the
because of
board,
compliance. Yeah. And so it's been interesting though, with some of the conversation around AI, because it's kind of the same thing with my industry of just, is this going to wipe us all out? And it's like,
Yeah.
no, at the end of the day, like, we're people working with people. Like, people aren't going to be, wiped out. And so it's really going to turn into, how do we learn to use this
Right.
at its, at its best capacity, so that it can, free our time up. I saw a funny post a couple months ago about how, it was a graphic designer, and she said, I wanted AI to like do my laundry and do my chores, not do
Right.
art,
Yes, exactly. I'm waiting for that thing. If you could fold my laundry and put it, like, I'm good at washing it and drying it, but if you get an AI tool to fold it and put it away, I'm in.
Yeah. And so I think for us, like, treating it like that, right? Like, what are the things that are the laundry, in the business, and can we have more components of what we do automated, or things that, you have, I think even just with before AI, a lot of things like templates and tools and automations and, those kinds of components, there's so much opportunity there if you find bottlenecks within your practice and, work through them. And then now you've got the added layer of, we can have a template where then it runs through AI. And then before it gets sent out, an admin looks at, somebody looks at it. But now this is going to speed up our, quick win that I see a lot of people deploying now is the AI note takers, and just that ability to, now we don't need somebody in the meeting taking the notes. We do need somebody reviewing this before it goes out, just so that there's nothing non-compliant in there. But they can watch this video at 1.5 times speed, and now this has cut their time in half for having to review it and then put the notes out. And so
it's so true. And
like
Catherine, you mentioned it. You said bottlenecks. I mean, usually bottlenecks come because we don't have a process around it, or it's something we really don't want to do, or we don't enjoy, so we just kind of ignore it. So my job is getting there and figure out, what are those, yours too, what are these bottlenecks, and how can we fix them so they're not bottlenecks anymore. And advisors, usually they'll ignore them all day long. You guys listening, you're doing this, because if it's something you don't enjoy, you're gonna be like, I'll just put it off until, and then it becomes a bigger problem. But if we can solve that with tech, with AI, with people, then we can get the advisor back to doing what they actually enjoy, if they know what that is. I mean, first we got to figure out what it is the advisor really wants to be doing, and with who.
Yeah. And I love, another, I forget the full quote of this, but it was a Nassim Taleb quote about how procrastination can be a really good sign that if you're procrastinating on stuff, it means that you probably shouldn't be doing it. So that, that's a natural response. That's a natural protective response. And you should listen to that. Like, if you're procrastinating, you shouldn't be doing it.
None of us procrastinate on stuff we enjoy. And that's what, I frequently, it sounds like a silly question, but in my, my private clients, I'm meeting with them pretty frequently, and we're having frequent conversations. Somebody's like, what was fun this week? What'd you enjoy? And I ask it just like that. And they usually will, because wherever they go tells me where their energy is. If I have them do more of that, they're going to grow.
Yeah.
Our job is just to figure out, all right, what do we need to get off your plate? What can we leverage to people or AI to, bring your load down a little bit so you can go do more of the fun stuff?
Yeah, I love that.
If advisor really sat in that and said, what do I want my business and my life to look like? And what do I have fun doing during the week and with who? If we did 80% that, things would be great, but they're in the middle of the bottleneck procrastinating. So that's what's keeping them from growth.
It's just holding them back. So for advisors who are looking to get into your world, Kristin, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
I'm a connector. I love it. So I would say the first step is follow me on LinkedIn. Connect with me. I love engaging with people. I love talking to people. Don't be spammy. Don't start pitching me on day one. That's the quickest way to get on the no list. But LinkedIn is a great way. And our website, My FA Coach, we do a ton of work. We've also got a phenomenal group and community on there too. It's kind of our group program for people looking to test the waters and see how some strategy work could benefit them and their firm. We've got a lot of opportunities there. So start at LinkedIn and then check out the website too.
Wonderful. Any final thoughts for the advisors listening before we go?
I would say, here's a quote I use a lot with advisors. If you want to 2X your business, your life, your fun, all of that, do more. But if you want to 10X your business, do something different. So your job as advisors is to go out and figure out, what is the thing I need to do just a little bit different.
That's such good feedback. That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it,
Thanks for having
Kristin.
me. It was fun. Thanks, Catherine.
And for those of you listening, we'll post her LinkedIn wherever you're encountering this online. I'm always interested in hearing your feedback. If there was something in this episode that stood out to you, feel welcome to send me a LinkedIn DM, because we're always trying to make the show more impactful for the advisors who are listening. And I'm always interested to hear what people take out of it, because sometimes I get responses that I'm not expecting. So we're always interested in hearing from you as well. But for everyone listening, this was another episode of the Financial Advisors Want to Know podcast. And thank you for joining us.